Happy Saturday. So one of the things I forgot to tell you both that I was challenged this week to do something artistic through the week, right? So to have a little fun with it, I said, all right, I'm going to do a musical challenge. So almost all of my sessions that I've been starting with a musical introduction. So they're like, hello, Charlie Brown. They're like, are you okay? So I had to explain the thing. So I joke with them and with my clients. I'm like, I wonder how many clients I'm going to have left at the end of the week with my singing. They're like, just keep going, Patrick. Just go with it. So hello to everyone and welcome to this wonderful webinar. I am licensed mental health Patrick Monette. I'm in Northern New York, Plattsburgh, New York. And I also specialize in couples and marriage therapy. And I have two amazing therapists that are joining me today, who I'll have them introduce themselves in a minute. And I just wanted to, as we rock and roll today, if there's anyone that has any comments or any feedback or questions, to please put them in the comment box, or you can email me if you want your identity kept private at patrickmonette13 patrickmonette13@gmail.com. So if there's anything coming up of any of our discussion today, please just send us a message and we'll do our best to answer them. So hello, Marcia and Bobbi. How are you both today?
Doing good.
Doing good. Now, could you both just introduce yourselves again and remind us where you both are located?
I'm Bobbi Terry, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, private practice in Plattsburgh, New York, and have a generalist practice, mostly working with adolescents through adults.
Welcome, Bobbi.
And I'm Marcia Vickman, and I am a licensed clinical professional counselor and certified alcohol and drug counselor in Chicago. And I am also a certified EFT therapist and supervisor. And I'm president and training director of Chicago EFT.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome, Marcia, all the way from Chicago, where one day I would like to go to have a fresh deep dish pizza because I hear they're amazing out of Chicago. We had a Chicago Uno here in Plattsburgh for many years, but it recently closed with the pandemic, but I hear they're amazing.
Very good. But come in the summertime.
Okay,
it's much more fun here in the summertime.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about different. As I was saying, I specialize in couples and relationships as well. And one of the therapies that Marcia is talking about is EFT, which is emotionally focused therapy. And I think what's nice is one of the reasons I wanted to organize the webinar was so many times people ask me, different things about couples and relationships, and some of the questions we have today prepared address those of what do I need to do to be in a healthy relationship? And I'm so thankful for Marcia and Bobbi for you joining me today, because I love being able to talk about this and get different perspectives and different approaches. And since this is the second time we've done this, I know it's also a lot of fun just to share our different experiences as clinicians. So I'm so excited and thankful that you're both joining me today for this adventure.
Thank you for having me.
And me too. Yeah.
And so what I've talked about with Bobbi and Marcia are different things. One of the stresses that we see in relationships is how do I improve my relationship, how to make it healthy. One of the things that I just want to throw out there for people in my area is I am offering a workshop coming up in September called Hold Me Tight, which is an EFT based therapy. Not a therapeutic, how would you describe it? I guess it's a wonderful workshop. I'm doing it online. I'm doing it on 3 Saturdays, so that way it's a little bit easier for people to be able to connect, and that way, with everything going on with the virus, people can feel a little bit safer. And it's a wonderful opportunity for people to be able to spend time with their partner and focus on the relationship, which during these crazy times, the relationship usually tends to be put to the back burner. And I think some of the questions and areas that we're going to cover today really talk about that, of taking time to put the relationship on the front burner and to be able to learn some extremely healthy, effective, evidence-based skills to improve your relationship, to improve your communication, and most importantly, the emotional attachment with your partner. So if anyone's interested in that, please contact me, and I'd love for you to join us. So what we're going to be doing today is we have some questions that people have sent to us, and I'm going to just read them out, and then each one of the panelists, we're going to just kind of discuss them and see how it flows from there. Once again, if anyone who's watching has any questions or any comments, please just put them in the comment box and we'll do our best to respond. Or as I said at the beginning, you can also email us and we'll do our best to respond to those. So the first question that I'm going to read is, what is the purpose of couples therapy? When would you recommend a couple reach out for help? I love this question. What do either one of you ever get this question often?
I do not typically get that question. I usually get the people that already know they need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good question because I'm not sure about the two of you, but I'll often find that people will come in crisis. Or they'll come in, at a point when their relationship is, kind of on the precipice, right? And so while we recognize that that's absolutely a significant time to come in for therapy, I think there are times in which hopefully people can begin to recognize when they may be able to come in sooner before it reaches that point of crisis.
Right. And it's funny because I see a wide spectrum of that. I'll see some people who come in when they're in panic, when there's an emergency going on. I get this question more in my individuals or when I'm doing other workshops. How would I know if, because I think the way I interpret this is people go to couples therapy or they think they go to couples therapy because something bad is happening and we're scared and the end of the relationship is there. And I think it's almost kind of like the what is that old saying, like a pound of prevention? I can't remember the saying, so I'm going to mess it up. But, being more preventive about your relationship is going to prevent a lot of the bad things from happening. And in a recent workshop, I was talking about, I was raised in the Catholic Church and there was the pre-canon classes that we were taught about growing up, which are kind of these classes that you take before you get married. And I always just loved that idea of before you get married or before you get into that committed relationship of really doing some good work to get to know each other in a healthy way. And I know that one of the approaches I take, even though people may not agree with it, is every relationship at some point can deal with therapy. I think, being a therapist, when people say, do I need therapy? I usually say yes, even if I don't know what the problem is, because at some point we all need that support. And when I look at the question is what is the purpose of couples therapy, I think that's also individualized of what your issues are, what your struggles are, what your strengths are, and what goals you have as a couple that you want to work on together. That's kind of like my initial reaction. And then I guess
agree.
You agree? Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you both, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, what would you both recommend a couple reach out for help? Like how do you know, I think that's a good question, is when do you know whether you can do it on your own or whether you need that professional assistance? I think it's a really good question. How would you both respond to that?
I would say if either partner or both partners don't feel heard or understood by the other, and it happens, on an ongoing basis as opposed to just periodically, to the point where they start to feel like they're not safe in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And Bobbi, how would you feel with that question?
I think that, there are times, in which you have life transitions. And sometimes I think in those moments of life transitions, it can be difficult because you're moving at different paces. You're kind of moving here. So trying to find that balance as a couple
Mhm.
And I think sometimes it's really more about personal growth. If you recognize we're in this life transition, how are we going to move forward? Sometimes it's nice, like even for individual work, to have someone to process, to help you work on that communication, to um, enhance your connections.
Mhm.
I think sometimes there's moments when it's not necessarily a crisis, but you recognize that we're making this really significant life change. We're going to have an empty nest soon. How are we going to move forward? Let's maybe meet with somebody just for a few sessions to talk about that.
Mhm. I think that transition piece is so big, especially since we're all dealing with a transition of dealing with a pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you have people who, whose whole lives have been turned upside down, and financial, and school, and stress, and political, and health, and fear, and or the other end of the spectrum is I don't have any alone time, like this because of the shutdown or the pandemic. This person's in my face, and I'm going to kill them.
Yeah,
Help!
yeah,
Help! SOS!
yeah, exactly.
And being able to one of the things I had someone tell me once was when they were in couples therapy, they had friends find out that they were in couples therapy, and they got that stigmatized, oh, you're in couples therapy, and they said, actually, it's probably one of the best things we've ever done with our relationship because we love each other enough. And we're not in crisis at that time, they were saying, but we just want to do better for each other. And I thought that was the most beautiful response of to kind of challenge that stigma of we're not in couples therapy just because we're screwed or because it's that bad, but because we care enough to know we're growing, we're learning, and we need someone who can guide us and give us the tools that we may not have.
Exactly.
I just thought that was a really beautiful response to that.
Great.
Is there anything else that you would recommend that a couple reach out for help, like any other warning signs or consistencies that you see?
So there's that kind of, I think, the balance between the two, like what Marcia was saying. If you aren't feeling safe in the relationship, if you're not feeling heard or validated, and on the other hand, it doesn't have to be because there's a problem area necessarily, but if you recognize, we really want to improve some of this connection, and let's meet with somebody to look at other alternatives or things we can do to strengthen kind of our connection as we move forward. And in particular during the pandemic, I think there's a lot of stressors, and having that external source, somebody to help you process that, I think is very helpful.
Right. I agree. And I see that a lot too. Once again, what I was saying is when the relationship is put on the back burner, I see that a lot with parents where, I can't, because I'm not a parent, I can't really relate to that pressure of I'm responsible for this little life here, so we're going to take all of our resources and put it into this life or the 2 or the 3 or the 6 kids that we have, and we'll deal with the relationship in 20 years when they're gone. And then all of a sudden you're living with a stranger. And one of the techniques that I just love the date night of go out and have a date night or spend some quality time dating each other again and getting to know each other. And depending on the couple, I'll try to put fun little stipulations of no work and no kids. And they're like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. That's part of the challenge. So I'm just going to continue with the questions that we were sent to, that were sent to us is for relationships, and this is kind of tying into what we're talking about, for relationships that are 10 plus years, especially when you have younger children, what are some ways that you can keep your marriage strong? So many times complacency and routine become factors. How do we make sure that our relationship stays strong and healthy? And how would you both respond to that? I think that's a really common struggle that I see.
It is. It is. Yeah, I think it's a lot about communication, healthy, open, direct, clear communication. Right? What are the needs? What are the concerns? How much attention does a partner feel special enough? ongoing conversation about those feelings and needs so that the other person can respond to them, because we don't always know what our partner wants or needs from us. And back to what you said about when there's children and the focus is on the children, a lot of times partners feel like they nurture their children because that's what a parent does. And they look to their spouse and they don't expect to have to nurture their spouse because their spouse is their equal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so they forget that that relationship and that person that does need nurturing as well, and attention and focus as well. And so that's a lot of times that's what happens, what goes missing in those parenting years.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be mindful that your partner does need something, they don't need you to necessarily take care of them, but they do need you to make sure that they feel special and seen and known and heard,
Mm-hmm.
responded to.
And, tagging on to what you're saying, Marcia, I think, there are moments in which I think it may be difficult for us to recognize that we teach others how to treat us. And so we teach our partners how to treat us as well. So if we allow something or we continue the same pattern, it becomes part of our normal, right? So when you talk about that communication, clear, direct communication, helping them understand what you're needing, how you're feeling, is kind of that one aspect. And I think in the other piece is really understanding your partners, how they feel nurtured and how they feel loved. Whether or not you're looking at the 5 love languages and what does it mean, and how do we understand that we may give love the way we want to receive it, but we're not necessarily giving love to our partner the way they want to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think opening that communication, understanding, because absolutely life is hectic, there's so much happening. You focus your energy on whether it's children or your work, or yourself. And so how do you attend to that partner and recognize that?
Right.
Not about taking care of their needs necessarily, but, offering them that piece of nurturing as well.
Right. Right. And you make a good point, right? Because everybody needs love in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you are just looking at your partner and giving them the kind of love or attention that you need, you're going to miss out on who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So really being open and receptive to who your partner is as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And I think having that discussion too of transitions of stress, that this, because you deal with one thing one way, the partner might deal with another thing, and in a different way, and have different coping skills and mechanisms. And one of the questions I ask couples, or when I'm doing retreats, is how many of you have ever had an argument? And, most people can raise their hands, and I'll say, how many of you want to win an argument? And everyone's hands go up, yeah, I want to win the argument. And I'll ask them, it's like, all right, so when you win this argument, what have you lost?
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's, all right, I got this imaginary crown and the title, and I won this argument, but that connection to my partner just took a really big hit because I had to win.
Right.
And I think sometimes we forget, no matter how long we've been with a partner, or when our partners, the people we work with, have been together so long, we forget that we're all human and that we all have needs and we all have vulnerabilities. And that fear of losing our partner is so scary.
Yeah.
And most of us, especially I'll speak from a male perspective, how I feel is we're not really taught to say, hey, I'm worried about missing you, but I can get angry at you because you didn't pay the bill, or, wow, I'm worried that I'm not doing this, but I can't share that I'm getting worried, but I can get angry. Like, I think men, a lot of times we tend to deal with anger in that destructive way.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, oh, wait, instinct. I miss you.
Right. That's instinct. Instinct helps us manage our vulnerable feelings.
That was a word in my mind.
Yeah.
The vulnerability, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find one thing to just tag along to what you're saying about needing to win the argument. I find that the desire to and the drive to win an argument typically has to do with someone wanting to feel respected.
Mm-hmm.
and worthy of their opinion or their stance being recognized. And so because feels very indicative of their level of worth, they're going to fight harder to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's that struggle, right, to feel validated.
Exactly.
Really feel validated by your partner, and in that moment it requires the other person, who's listening to, put in reserve your own emotional response, try to reduce your reactivity so you really can sit, and it may be uncomfortable, but it really is about attending to or listening to your partner in that way, and hearing them and letting them know you recognize their pain, and not form your argument in your head while they're talking.
Exactly.
You can really sit with that.
And it's hard to do that, which is why arguments go into, sort of spiral into
those vicious cycles.
Yeah.
And it's, as a couples therapist, when I'm working with someone, I pull from EMDR and EFT and that humanistic approach of really, what are we seeing here? What are the dynamics? What's happening when they're coming into my office? And what can I do to be that support and that therapeutic intervention to help them feel safe enough and develop that safety and to be in that place of vulnerability and say, this isn't really about you not getting the milk. This is me about, one thing or the other. It's like, what is it really about? And learning how to be on that. I call it kind of that bridge of vulnerability, of put yourself out on that bridge and working with the other partner to meet you in the middle so you aren't alone, so you aren't feeling disconnected. And I think that's when couples are able to do that, you see such amazing transformation in the relationship, in the dynamics of the couple.
Yes. Yes.
So, and then going back to the question about just complacency and routine, the other thing I would say is you have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort too. I see that with a lot of people. When I talk to my colleagues, sometimes what they're seeing, especially about couples, of what's working, what doesn't, what interventions work. And the questions that I'll usually ask my couples is, what have you done in the last week, or what is working and what isn't? And knowing that if you want your relationship to stay strong or to be stronger or healthier, just like anything else in our life, we have to make it a priority. We have to put that energy into it. We have to be able to say, yeah, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to do this work. I don't want to have to feel, or I don't want to have to do this. But knowing that doing that is going to put us in a better place than where we've been.
And I think the part at times, Patrick, as well, is people can feel overwhelmed with time and commitment. And I think finding moments and trying to create those moments, and it may be, 5 minutes, you're going to kind of sit together, you sit outside and you'll hold hands and you'll just be in that space. It doesn't have to be necessarily one date night a week. And that's wonderful to be able to incorporate that and to create that time. But it's about finding those moments. When are we going to have those moments? Let's get up earlier in the morning and spend a little bit of time, 10 minutes, 15. Let's go for a walk. Trying to create those opportunities when you can as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell couples, when you are connected to your partner, you don't need a whole lot of time. Right?
That's true.
Those little moments. It can be, brushing your teeth together in the bathroom, getting ready to go to bed. You don't need a whole lot of time.
Right. Especially when that connection is there. Sometimes it's almost like refreshing our page on the computer. It's like, we just need to refresh. It's like, oh, you're still there. Our attachment's still secure. Or if I need you, even if it's something, and I remind couples this, is that quality time isn't just about problems. It's about, hey, I saw this joke, or wow, I just had this memory of our first date and that dinner you made me. And it can really just be reliving that joy. That's when people fall in love. We forget those moments, I think, sometimes.
Right. Little messages of, you're in my mind and in my heart.
Right.
Right.
I went into
think of
this
it,
crystal store once, and I don't know if either one of you have ever heard of this, but I picked up this really beautiful, it was two prisms, but they were together. They had grown together, and they were just clear quartz. And the woman in the store said, that's called a marriage crystal. Have you ever heard of that? And I said, no. She said, historically, you would buy this, so it had the two prisms together, and you would give it to a married couple. And they would put it in a place in their home where they would both see it every day.
wow.
And that way, when you needed time, when you needed to carve out couples time, you would put it on the side. And that would be the signal that your partner needs you.
Oh,
Isn't that? I just love that. That's just so cool. That was, it just kind of took my breath away of those moment making, of those connections. And I'll share that a lot with my couples as something to do, but also say, take the idea, but put it into your world. If you're big into technology, is there that emoji or the meme or the poem or, some sort of symbolism that means something to the two of you of, hey, I miss you.
mhm.
Can we just have 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or something like that, just so it can be us again.
You know,
I don't know, I just thought that was really cool.
that is wonderful. And I think that word always seems like that intentional connection is with intention. You know,
Yeah.
you step back and you really are present, you recognize it. I really like that idea. That's great.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what happens with a lot of disconnected couples is they can't clearly tell their partner that they need them or they miss them.
Right.
So they try to do it more indirectly. Messages are all scrambled. And then the message doesn't land for the other person. And then the person who's in need gets disappointed and feels rejected.
And we just had someone, Jay, who joined us tonight, is just saying, having an unbiased opinion is never a bad idea. Couples therapy is a game changer. Going to couples therapy shows how much you care about each other. And I completely agree with that. And I think what a lot of people are doing, especially with COVID, is trying to, because there's a lot of anxiety and worry about going to couples therapy, that stigma. If I go to couples therapy, does that mean our relationship is doomed? And I think, that's what couple retreats are about, couple workshops, doing different things that so many people are trying to offer to say, hey, there are other supports out there in addition to couples therapy. And I think it's just a great way to say, how are we taking time to focus on our relationship? Maybe it'll be 30 seconds, maybe it'll be a weekend.
Yes, yes.
Because I know travel is still really hard for a lot of people. So being able to say, how do we carve this out? How do we do this? How do we put that intentional intention out there to focus on us?
Yeah.
One of the other questions that someone wrote in was, what do you consider the most important trait for a strong, healthy relationship? That's a good question.
It is. And there are many, right?
Yes.
There are many. Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
So one of the ones that I will pick is, I think, which is interesting, right? When you think about couples, and I'm going to talk about individuality in the couple. And so from my perspective, one of the things, I'll show my little diagram that I drew.
I love it.
So if you look at this and say, person A and person B, and this is kind of their individual identity, right? Your individual self. And then here you are down in a coupled relationship. And there's this nice overlap, this healthy connection, but you retain your individual identity within that coupled relationship. And the hope is that you move back and forth between your individual identity and this coupled self. So during times of physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy, you may see these two merging, right? And you see this piece connecting, you feel as one, but then there's this healthy kind of movement back. So being able to retain that versus I'm always down here, I need this to survive, I don't exist up here. Without this individual identity, I think you really struggle to maintain a healthy connection.
I love the diagram. I'm a visual person, so that helps me, Bobbi. I appreciate it.
So how we, I think we really enhance each other by strengthening. If you ever read The Missing Piece by Shel Silverstein, it talks about kind of rolling along, trying to find something to fill me, to be complete. and recognizing at the end of the book, I really need a partner to kind of roll along with me, not to fill me. So that individual piece that you enhance the relationship, and you can move between that and your coupled self.
I love that.
So I think individuality, and we can explore that more, but I can move on to somebody else.
Oh, I love that. Yay. Marcia, how about you? What would your go-to strength?
My go-to strength is feeling safe in the relationship. So truly knowing that your partner sees you for all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses and loves you overall, that they can accept you for all the good and all the bad. And safe and loved and cared for.
Thank you. Oh, Patrick's frozen, I think. Are you there?
Am I frozen? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it back? Okay. I think everyone is like online, so I think it's just like getting saturated.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, man, that's hard because I think both of your answers I embody and I totally believe in as well. I would say one of my go-to is kind of like a two-parter. I would say honesty and transparency. And learning how to be honest and to be consistent with who you are, as kind of like tying into the individuality of who I am as a person and then whom I am in this relationship, what my needs are, what my goals are individually and together. And I think sometimes people, and even when we're talking about honesty about feelings, I'll have a lot of people say, well, I wasn't honest about how I felt, or I didn't really say because I didn't want to get into an argument. But then normally what happens is, well, the argument's going to happen because you were dishonest. And learning how to create that environment where it's okay if we don't agree. That doesn't mean we're enemies, but being able to say, how are we both honest with our own truths and learn how to dance together as a couple, I think is really important. And when we I call it the ostrich technique, when we put our head in the sand and we pretend it's not a problem or it doesn't bother us, that's a recipe for disease and resentment. And it usually doesn't end well.
Correct.
That's kind of how I go.
You can't get your needs met. Yeah, you can't get your needs met if you're not giving clear messages.
Right. And then hold it against the partner when it's like, well, he or she didn't do that. It's like, but they didn't know. They didn't know. It's funny, one of how we all develop like just little jokes or mechanisms with our clients. I always also remind clients that it doesn't matter how long we've been with our partner, there is no mind reading. So if you haven't said it or communicated it, it's not on the table. And I think sometimes, being able to, and even in my own personal life of saying, did I actually communicate that? Did I say that? Did I ever tell that person this, good, bad, ugly, or whatever? And it's crazy how many times I've caught myself in that own cycle of, wow, I dropped the ball on this one.
And recognizing it, kind of that, cultivating that conscious awareness, kind of coming back to that place of recognizing, that we communicate in our mind often, but we're not necessarily being clear verbally.
Right.
So that's the kind of the mind reader piece, right? I know that I've expressed that, or I've told him this way and that way, but have you really said that? Have you really communicated that verbally clearly, as opposed to all the different ways you've tried to let your partner know?
Right, which is really, really common, right? Because we are really familiar with what our own experience is, what we think and what we feel. And we just assume that people can see inside of us, right? And that it doesn't happen that way. So there's lots of things that happen emotionally inside of us that we're not communicating clearly to our partner. They can't tell.
Right.
right? They miss out on a lot of really nice, loving stuff
Right.
that we're not sharing. And sometimes it's the feelings that we are even disconnected from ourselves that we're not sharing, right? So if we're not aware of them, then how can we share them with our partner? And then our partner can't pick up a cue that we're not giving very clearly.
Right. And I think sometimes clarification, because as we're talking about this, I just hear in my head all these clients who have said, but I told him a million times, how does he not know? How does she not know? But then when you really break it up, it's, well, because they probably said yes or no just to avoid an argument, or they said yes or no because they didn't know how to respond. And I think going back to some of the skills that we're all talking about is knowing that it's okay to tell your partner you don't know how to do something.
Right, and recognizing, I think, along with that, Patrick, too, is that if you told them a number of times and then nothing changes, there's no shift, and the pattern continues, you're basically saying this is okay. And what I said before maybe is kind of cancel out, because I expressed this to you, something really didn't shift, and it's continuing to go on, and I'm tolerating it until the next time. So I think part of that is really being at that place where you try to, like Marcia's saying, having that place of feeling safe. Patrick, being honest, being vulnerable, allowing yourself to feel okay in your discomfort, to say, this is happening a number of times and it's really distressing to me. I really would like this to change. How can we work together to have this, to have this opportunity for this change to happen? Mm-hmm. And hopefully then if it comes up again, then you kind of engage in that moment, mm-hmm. as opposed to letting it pass.
Right. And what makes it more complicated is that when someone thinks they're being very clear and communicating something to their partner, and it happens again and again and they don't feel heard, they start to make sense of that by saying it must be something about my value to my partner. It must be something about me. And so that then becomes part of what drives them the next time when they're trying to communicate, this sense of I'm not enough, or I'm too much, or I'm not special enough, I'm not cared about. And then that makes everything have another layer of complexity and pain, mm-hmm. which are those cycles that we talk about in EFT.
Right. And another aspect that I also think about is I'm a certified EMDR therapist too, so there's that trauma piece that comes into my mind as well of, is that person actually able to hear me? Are they in fight or flight mode? Are they actually present with me? Am I present with them? And slowing down the train. And I think I shared this last time. One of the pieces of emotional focus therapy that I love is, as a person, how it's taught me to slow down. Mm-hmm. And really say, what is going on here? What is happening? Where am I in this moment?
Yeah, right. And to remove and to go beneath, yes, the reactive emotion, which is usually anger, frustration, annoyance, to go beneath that to the more tender, vulnerable emotion that's getting activated. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do, but it's so necessary.
And I think, that's one of the pieces too, couples will come in and they say, all right, well, you're never going to believe what happened in the last week. And, it's the same thing that happened the previous week. It's just, it's a different flavor of it. But when you can slow down and say, what if we peel apart the layers of that onion, what are the dynamics that are pulling you apart, that are preventing you from having that emotional safety, that vulnerability, and that connection? And I think when you start doing that, you really start seeing some miraculous healing happen, mm-hmm. and a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm. Right. It makes space for the connection.
Yes. So it kind of ties into this question, and our discussion ties into the next question I wanted to share, which, Bobbi, you might have to get your diagram again, because I love diagram. So, and I think this is a good question, is when my husband first retired, and I was also home because I had lost my job, We were together every moment. He always wanted to do everything with me. I had to explain to him that I love him and love being together, but also needed some time alone. For me, it means time to enjoy my hobbies and various commitments that I have. And then the time we are together is even better. It was hard at first for him to understand and not feel hurt. But now he has days like today when he was riding his bike and is enjoying it. The riding is not for me, but he loves it. So it gives us both time to do things that fulfills us in different ways. I know a lot of couples that have that issue both in newish marriages and in retirement. Even in families, sometimes a person needs a break, even for a couple of hours to have some solitude. How do I express this need without creating a fight or argument? And I'm going to say hashtag insert Bobby's diagram because that's exactly. Yeah.
But in truth, right? It's recognizing sometimes when you pull here, that might create this unsettled feeling, right, for this other individual. And I think when Marcia was talking about that safety in the relationship is feeling that sense of security, number one, within yourself first. And then number two, recognizing that in your partner, that when my partner goes to do something separate, it's because it enhances them and it helps nurture them. And that may be what they really need, not just emotionally, but to kind of recharge themselves. And that in how you respect that and how you support that. That your husband likes to ride bike. I don't know if it was motorcycle bike or road bike.
They didn't specify in the question.
But there are ways that you can kind of join and support that, right? And so I think like what she's saying is she recognizes how much he loves that, and she hopes that he takes that understanding and he can recognize that and support her and her own individual pursuits. And I think, knowing that when your partner does that, it's not a separation from you, it's an enhancement of themselves.
Right, that's the piece that I think often gets activated. If the husband who, I think it was the husband who was retired, or maybe that's just where my brain went, wants to spend all the time with the partner, what drives that? Is that his understanding of when you're retired, you're a couple and you're supposed to do everything together? Or is it a fear of being alone? Right? What is driving that need to be together constantly? Right? And if the other partner says, hey, I need some alone time, what might the fears be that come up for the partner who wants to be together so much? What is that? Is that a rejection? Does that person feel like he's not wanted? Like all these emotions, the person who feels like I don't want so much together time, what are the feelings that come up with the together time? Does that person feel like they're losing their own individuality? Is that scary to them? Does it feel like they're not respected for their own desires and interests, right? So all those feelings that exactly, right? All the feelings that drive those needs need to be looked at in order to understand the other person and what they need and want.
So that underlying dynamic, what is that there that exists underneath?
Under the surface.
What is the behavior? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the behavior on the surface speaking to what is happening here?
Exactly. And the need for clear communication.
Right. And
right?
It's interesting because I've heard from so many men that I've worked with is, well, I don't have a lot of friends. And so when I'm retired, the dream or the expectation is it'll be my wife or my partner and I in a heterosexual situation, of just like it's supposed to be the two of us. And so the other partner gets suffocated. Like, wait a minute, I don't have that same goal or that same belief system. I've heard that a lot of how do I, going back to the individuality is, I don't know, I was never taught how to be an individual in a relationship. And that it's kind of a foreign concept for a lot of people.
And it is kind of an interesting, I think, dynamic when you look at kind of some of the earlier questions about the value and the importance of nurturing the couple time. Because often, I mean, I've seen when things are hectic and overwhelming and you have children, you might want a little bit of time just for yourself to go read a book or go for a walk or do something on your own. and you're not necessarily looking to that partner to spend time with, that one may come down on the list. So it is very important throughout the course of the relationship to nurture that connection, that time together, which then can enhance the sense of security. You know, I'm okay when you go off and do something separate because I know that we have this connection.
Exactly, because when there's a solid, secure connection, partners don't mind when the other partner needs alone time.
Right.
Because they know they're coming back, know that they're valued.
And I think what I've seen in my experiences too is when there's that deeper insecurity of, if we pull back those layers of, what if he or she is happier without me? Or I've been betrayed, I've given that person the individuality, and then I lost the relationship. And I think that's when you're looking at the dynamics of couple work, and also some individual work might be needed as well, because they correspond really well together. You know, a lot of times I think we've all seen it, is sometimes people will come in for couples therapy, but one of the partners might need some individual work just to kind of like unpack some of their own baggage and boxes, and then be able to come back and do some great couples work. But that reassurance piece of, hey, I'm not going anywhere, I just enjoy this and I want you to enjoy that as well, I think is really important.
Yep.
And it kind of opens up to like the next question, which I think is a good one as well. Is, I've been wanting to tell my partner something that they are doing is really annoying or upsetting, that they do that bothers me. How do I phrase it in such a way that they won't feel attacked? Such as using I phrases instead of you. I know phrasing can make all the difference in the discussion and how it's received. Please help. And I could just, see someone like, pulling their hair. It's like, I'm going to kill you that again. Or, a lot of times it's funny. I mean, like, wait till we get to couples therapy and I tell them everything that you did it again, as if we're the referee.
Yeah, exactly.
One important piece is really recognizing where you are in that moment. If you're heightened and you feel, emotionally at a tense place, and that's probably not the best time to talk to your partner. Allow yourself time to kind of have that de-escalate a little bit so you can express it, so you are able to be in charge of that emotion, and that emotion is not going to drive your conversation with your partner. I think when that energy comes in and that emotion, whether it's hurt, frustration, fear, if you're expressing that, that's what the partner's going to feel. It's going to be hard to use your words and say, I'm really feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling very unsettled, because you're going to become unsettled or become the frustration. So allow yourself time to have your emotions settle. So that's one thing you can do when you talk to your partner. Make sure that you're coming into the conversation at a place where you feel you can express that emotion, as opposed to having it be in charge.
Right. I think that's essential, right? Because if you're entering that conversation in that triggered place, the delivery is going to not be as effective and productive as you'd hope it would be.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I think is to begin the conversation by telling the partner how much they mean to them, how important they are, how the relationship is meaningful, something that tells the partner, I value you, I love you. And then there's also this one piece that I'd like to be addressed, so that there's no confusion, that the relationship itself, the person themselves is valuable and loved, even if there's this one thing that needs to be addressed.
Right. And also knowing, I refer, one of the homework assignments I have my couples do sometimes is watch the movie Inside Out. Because I think it's such a beautiful demonstration of what happens in our brain when we have the emotions taking over the motherboard, and when we're scared or we're angry or we're disgusted or we're sad, learning how to identify, where am I right now emotionally? If my partner's trying to connect with me, am I even hearing them? Am I thinking about work? Am I worried about the bills? Am I is my defenses up, so they're telling me something, but I've got my armory on and I'm ready to attack. And you know, I try to teach some grounding techniques as well, of just making sure, how do you get back in your body? Because we don't want people to not be emotional or not have those reactions, because they're normal, but they're going to be destructive if we act out in that way. And it's just going to pull that connection even tighter, or, you know, further apart, which is what neither of us want in the relationship. So one of the approaches I usually take is, where are you in these moments of communication? Where are you emotionally? How are you having the conversation? And what is it that you actually want to get out of it? Is it about changing a behavior? Is it you know, I try to go a little bit deeper. Is it something that's really about your partner, or is it about you?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to say, is this something, you know, and I think that self-reflection piece is, if it really is about the partner, and then being able to bridge that. But I think sometimes we can also project our stuff onto other people as well. And just really clarifying where our direction is going.
You know, I think, and in that as well, it ties into both of what you're saying, but Inside Out also talks about coexisting emotions, right?
Yes.
We can have an experience, that one experience, like when she lost, you know, the hockey, you know, game, and the parents were comforting her. She had, at that point, recognized, I can feel great sadness and love at the same time, right? I can have kind of in this one moment. And I think some of the relationships that happens, we have these varied emotions, and it really becomes difficult to kind of recognize that. So I think, kind of like what Marcia's saying, I love you and I really care about you, yet this piece is so disruptive. How do I, you know, express that to you, and how can I be present with both or all of those feelings?
And I think that also ties into when we have to share with our partner something that they're doing, and also learning how to be receptive to that as well. Of creating that environment in the relationship of, how do we do this so it isn't about, and I think that's what I see it often is, and I think that's what the question is how do I do this so we do get closer without tearing each other apart? And even though they're talking about, how do I not have an argument, and I know people hate arguments and conflict, but I think if we went a little bit deeper, is, how do I do this so it doesn't hurt our relationship, so it doesn't hurt our connection? How can I develop those skills to be honest, to be transparent, to be loving, like you're both saying, and to create that safe environment to be vulnerable with my partner?
I think that can be part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. Part of the conversation is, I'm telling you this because you are important to me and I want a deeper connection, right? And so I need to let you know this, so you're aware.
Right. And I've had, I don't know if either of you have ever asked this question, but sometimes when I'm working with couples, you see the beauty in these two people, right? And you just see that they are fighting to do this, and they're doing the work, they're trying to get there, and they beat themselves up when they get back in that vicious cycle, and your heart just hurts for them, because you know they're trying to get there, they haven't connected. And I've asked them, you know, who in your life ever served as a role model for a healthy romantic relationship in your life? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I've ever gotten an answer. Mm-hmm. And to me, that just, you know, it validates of, all right, you both are working so hard and learning something completely new that was never modeled for you. And we really need to bring in that compassion. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is even bigger than we thought. This isn't just that you're messing up. It's you're speaking a language you've never learned.
Right.
And when I've asked that question, they look at each other, it's almost like there's a bubble of tension pops, and it's like, oh, I'm not just failing you. I'm not just letting you down. I just may not have learned how to do it yet.
Yeah.
And it just opens a beautiful, beautiful bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's holding them in their pain.
Yes.
right? And telling them that they're okay, they're normal,
Yeah.
and that this is hard.
Right. And they're not alone.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just, and I think one of the things when we work with couples, and you both can chime in, is it's absolutely beautiful work. And when I'm working with a couple, there's such, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say even in the midst of the really difficult moments, and even in the midst of pain,
Yeah.
you can, because that's where you see that growth, right? You see that you can see that movement, um, and it's such a hard thing to see, an emotional thing to see, but coming through the other side of that and knowing that we can be there in those really difficult moments and we can survive this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a humbling experience. And, that was another piece of why I wanted to create these webinars, is some people may not be at the stage or may not have the resources to do therapy, but maybe they could just connect with a few people who specialize in couples and in marriage therapy, and just kind of know, all right, there are resources out there that can help us, and kind of like a guiding light sometimes, because I think people also don't know where to get help, or don't know who to trust, or don't know what's out there. And I wanted to create that for our communities.
That's a great thing, I think.
It is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, for me, it's also, it's so much fun. I love this, of spending the time with both of you and your experiences. And, just, it's one of the things that I said to a friend of mine is, we were talking about what happens when, as a therapist, when you need a therapist. And I said, the problem is some of my closest friends and colleagues are the best therapists that I would love to go and see. But, I just feel honored, that you're both here to join me in this and to be able to do this webinar with me. I really appreciate that. And I just appreciate everyone who's watching and will watch and writing in the questions. And I hope that it was helpful. And Marcia, I know we were talking a little bit before Bobbi popped in, I was talking a little bit about the Hold Me Tight workshops that I offer. Are there any in Chicago that are coming up that you want to share with, or I can post afterwards?
I believe that those are on hold because of the pandemic.
Okay.
That the people here that typically run the Hold Me Tight workshops are not doing them virtually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
but if anyone's interested, they can send me an email or send you an email, and you'll forward it to me, Patrick.
Yes.
And I will see if they are starting up those groups.
Okay, wonderful. And as I said, in this area, what's going to be online as well, so it doesn't really matter where you are, is in February and October, I'll be doing the Hold Me Tight online, and hopefully that'll work. And right now I'm doing it for 3 days, but I've had a couple of people say, can we break it up, and doing it different times. So if you have a chance, just visit my website, patrickmonette.com. And that's where all my social media is and my newsletter, so you can keep in touch base of everything that we're doing, and other professionals in the community are doing as well, so you can see the great resources that we have out there. So once again, Bobbi and Marcia, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for taking this time to be with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And Bobbi, I'm sure we'll see each other with our masks in the building one day. All right, everyone, have a good weekend.
You too. Bye, Marcia.
Bye.